Hello, I'm Ross Montgomery. Today I'm going to be reading you an extract from my book, Alex the Dog and the Unopenable Door. This is the story about a boy who travels through an unexplored world to find out the truth about his father. I'm actually going to be reading chapter 2. In chapter 1, you find out a little bit about this world that the book takes place in. It's very much like ours, but it has a large area called the Forbidden Land, which nobody has ever been able to successfully explore. You also start the book at Cloister's boarding school. The character that you begin with is a man called Matthew, who is just starting his first day as new headmaster of Cloister's boarding school. He's very young, he's very inexperienced, and he's very nervous about the job. The old headmaster was actually his father, Mr. Price, and Matthew feels like he can't really live up to the expectations that have been placed upon him. The only thing he's learned about the school so far is that last night they found a boy called Alex Jennings who was being horribly bullied by being bucketed. That's when you get a bucket of water against the ceiling and have to hold it up with a pole all night. Matthew has just walked into his office to find that far from being empty, there's a young boy sitting in his chair behind his desk. Hope you enjoy it. Matthew glared at the boy sitting in the chair in front of him. He was wearing a very large hand-knitted jumper in a colour that Matthew would struggle to describe, and a school tie he had somehow managed to work into a sailor's knot. In his hand was a wooden clipboard held in front of him like a tray of biscuits. The expression on his face indicated he had no idea he wasn't welcome. "What are you doing here?" Matthew gasped. You're not supposed to come into my father's office. I mean my office without first. "Who are you?" the boy asked. I Matthew said, wheezing for breath. I'm the headmaster. You're not supposed to. Where's Mr. Price?" "Mr. Price is away," said Matthew. "I'm Mr. Price. I'm taking his place until he gets back." "Now, technically then that makes you acting headmaster," said the boy, "as opposed to the actual headmaster." "Yes, technically it does," said Matthew, going red in the face. "Now, for heaven's sake, get out of that chair." The boy quickly slid to the floor and shuffled out from behind the desk. He was very small, even for his age. The jumper almost reached his knees. "Sorry, sir," he muttered quietly, looking at the carpet. Matthew glared at him. "For the last time, who are you?" he snapped. "What do you think you're doing, waltzing into my office without first—" I'm Alex Jennings, sir," said the boy. Matthew stopped dead and looked at him. "Alex Jennings," he repeated. The boy nodded. "The boy that got bucketed last night. That was you?" Alex nodded. "Yes, sir." "Oh," said Matthew. "And you're fine now?" Alex shrugged. "Yeah, I guess." "Ah," said Matthew. That's good to hear." The two of them stood in silence for a moment. "Well?" Alex looked up. Yes, sir?" "What are you doing here, Alex?" The boy's eyes lit up. "Oh, yeah." Without another moment's pause, he leapt forward, wielding the clipboard like a steering wheel. "Do you like dogs, Mr. Price?" he began enthusiastically. "No," said Matthew. "Well, lots of people do," said Alex, not missing a beat. "Myself included. I love dogs, but my mum says if I ever bring one home again, she'll kill me. So, I propose that each child in school is given a dog that can live with them in their dorm rooms. Everyone loves dogs, so it's a sound investment, financially speaking." Matthew let the information settle. "Dogs," he said. "Only 25% of dogs in shelters ever find homes," Alex continued, "and that's an optimistic estimation. So, by rehousing these dogs, we'll be providing a public service as well as a profitable scheme for the school." Matthew looked back at him. "Dogs," he said. "Yes, sir," said Alex. "They're intelligent and noble beasts, and you can teach them to do tricks. We could have them collect mail and dirty laundry during school hours. Better yet, we could train them in the art of stunts and form them into a troupe of show dogs ready for the spring term." He held up a colourful handmade poster of a dog wearing a top hat being fired out of a cannon. Matthew looked at the poster and then at Alex.
Dogs, he said. 500 of them, sir, Alex grinned. Somersaulting through hoops, swallowing fire, you name it. A feast for the eyes and ears. I've got over 40 signatures of support from fellow students. Alex thrust the clipboard into Matthew's hands. That makes it officially ready for approval by the headmaster, or acting headmaster, which in this case is you. Matthew took a moment to collect himself. He looked down at the clipboard, and then back to Alex, who was nodding encouragingly. Dogs, he repeated. Some say man's best friend, sir, said Alex, giving a theatrical wink. Matthew looked back at the clipboard, and then back at the boy. Well, Alex, he began. Owning a dog is a great responsibility, one that a person should not simply jump into. Yes, said Alex, nodding enthusiastically. That's not to mention the school's budget, Matthew continued, which is usually spent on things like wages or new computers. I have to say the logistics of the school suddenly housing 500 dogs makes your ambitious performing dog plan an unlikelihood before we even consider the moral issues of training them to perform potentially fatal stunts. Yeah, I see, said Alex, still nodding. We can work on that. Besides, Matthew continued, most of the names on this petition are actually made up. He held up the clipboard. I don't think there's a pupil in the school called Get Bent Alex. And this one here is just a drawing of you being savaged by a Rottweiler. Alex nodded. The plan has come up against some resistance, he admitted, but I challenge you, Mr. Price, to name me one great plan that wasn't ridiculed in its time. Besides, most of the ridicule is from Jeremy Butterworth, who between you and me is an idiot, and whose French horn I have to pick up, by the way. Alex pointed over to a black case on Matthew's desk. It was covered in swear words written in Tipex. Oh, he wants his horn back, Matthew asked. Why are you getting it for him, Alex? I'm his roommate, sir. Matthew snorted. He can come and talk to me about it if he wants it so badly. I appreciate that, sir, said Alex, but he's just asked to stand in for a special concert. The bus is picking him up in less than an hour. I'm obviously loath to bring it to him myself as I've had it glued to my face all night, but if I don't do what he says, he'll use me as a pillow for the next week. Matthew's face dropped. You're not serious, Alex? Oh, yeah, said Alex with a shrug. I get beaten to a paste anyway, whether I do what he says or not. The others have bucketed me so many times now, I've gotten pretty good at it. You just put up with it, said Matthew. Pretty much, said Alex. Besides, things are looking up this year. I've started a dog walking service in the town, so I won't be on site during the prime post-prep bucketing hours. Would you like a business card? He reached into his pocket and offered Matthew a card. Matthew looked down at it. Alex Jennings, bona fide dog walker. The town, said Matthew. Alex, that's an hour away on the bus. Alex nodded. Actually, it's 3 buses. Matthew looked down at the business card and back up again. Alex, do you have many friends? Alex fiddled with his jumper. You mean who aren't dogs? I'm guessing. Matthew nodded. Then no, said Alex. I just like dogs. I see, said Matthew. There was an awkward pause. Matthew looked at the boy. He had absolutely no idea what to say. Muffin? He hazarded. Alex looked back up blankly. Matthew reached into his pocket and pulled out a slightly squished, cling-filmed blob. Muffins, said Matthew. Please have one. Alex reached out. Matthew suddenly grabbed it back. You can eat linseed, can't you? Alex looked blank. What's a linseed? Never mind. Alex took the muffin, looked at it, put it in his pocket. There was another awkward silence. Would you like to talk about it? Said Matthew after a while. Alex looked confused. The muffin? No, the bullying, Alex. Oh, said Alex. No, thank you, sir. I prefer not to. That's fine, Alex, said Matthew kindly. Slowly, he reached out and placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. You know, Alex, said Matthew warmly, You share your name with a very important person, someone who liked dogs, well, probably even more than you. Have you ever heard of Alex J. Jennings? Alex's face paled. Years ago, Matthew began, probably before you were even born, there was a man named Alex J. Jennings. Sir, said Alex weakly. He was a great and famous explorer, Matthew continued, ignoring him. Probably the greatest in the world. He scaled mountains no one had ever scaled before and mapped out jungles that had never been explored. So, when the Order of the Sword and Torch decided to launch a new expedition across the boundary into the Forbidden Land, they decided he was the ideal man to lead it. They made him the official head of expeditions. Ever heard of it, Alex? Alex was silent. Matthew shrugged. No, I guess you wouldn't have, he said. Your generation haven't even had a chance to see an expedition being launched, have you? Well, I can tell you it's a very important job, Alex. They don't give it to just anyone. I was just a young boy when Alex J. Jennings took the job. It was very big news. Remember, at that time, nobody had tried to set foot past the boundary in years, centuries even. Matthew turned to the enormous map that hung on the wall behind him. It showed the school grounds, the rugby pitches, and the tracks stretching far into the desolate outskirts beyond. The road to town snaked up from the bottom edge of the map, winding up past the school and up towards an enormous shape that dominated the top. There, as if some mistake had been made at the printers, the barren fields suddenly and abruptly ended, like a circle of blank paper had been stuck to the map itself. The Forbidden Land, said Matthew, the one place that no one has ever managed to explore. By the time Jennings took the job, people had tried everything to get past the boundary and discover what lay at its centre. And I mean everything, walking on special stilts, flying with enormous wooden wings, being fired out of a cannon. They even tried building a giant pier to the centre at one point. Of course, Matthew continued, they didn't succeed. It was no use. As you know, once you cross the boundary, everything changes. For as long as anyone can remember, no man, no woman, no child has ever managed to cross the boundary into the Forbidden Land without being irresistibly, forcibly pushed back out again. Matthew reached up to the map and pulled out a newspaper clipping that had been tagged to its side. But Alex J. Jennings was the first person to realise that dogs weren't affected by the power of the Forbidden Land, he continued. Dogs have been running over the boundary without getting forcibly pushed out for hundreds of years. It's almost as if a magnet draws them to the centre. So why not use them? Matthew held up the newspaper clipping. It was a faded sketch drawing of a man in an antique metal diving suit, an air pipe trailing from the back of his helmet. He was sitting on what looked like an enormous metal throne. The throne was bolted onto a giant sledge, and at the front of the sledge stood a pack of harnessed dogs. So, that's exactly what Jennings did, said the headmaster. He built a wheeled sledge, pulled by packs of dogs, and strapped himself to a great metal seat on the top. That way he couldn't be pushed out again once the sledge crossed the boundary, and there was no chance of him accidentally setting foot on the ground either. Of course, we all know the consequences of that happening. Matthew held out the newspaper clipping for Alex. The boy did not take it. He stood perfectly still, his eyes fixed to the carpet. Matthew awkwardly took back the clipping. Well, I can tell you they were very exciting times, Alex, he said. Everyone was certain Jennings would be the first one to make it the heart of the Forbidden Land and find out what was in the centre. When I was a child, Alex J. Jennings was my hero. I remember watching the television with my whole family the day he set off from the Great Expedition Centre, strapped to the chair in his metal suit. I thought he was the bravest man in the entire world. Matthew sighed. Unfortunately, the story doesn't end very happily, he said. No one heard back from him for weeks, and when they did, he'd lost the dogs and the sledge. It turns out he hadn't reached the centre of the Forbidden Land at all. He'd just gone bonkers. In fact, he thought he was a dog. They had to lock him up, I think. He was in a coma the last I heard of him. Matthew trailed off and turned back to the boy. Alex was still staring at the floor, his face flushed. But that's not the point, said the headmaster, grabbing Alex emphatically by the shoulder again. The point is, you shouldn't let anyone treat you like you've been treated, ever. Alex nodded, his eyes locked to the carpet. And the next one anyone tries to, said Matthew, I want you to think about what Alex J. Jennings would have done. Will you, Alex? Alex nodded furiously. Yes, Mr. Price. Matthew looked down at the boy, still staring at the carpet, fumbling his knotted jumper into a mass of knots and holes. Look, Alex, he said gently, don't worry about it. I'll let you take the horn this time. I know that standing up for yourself, it's not always easily done, is it? He paused for a moment to learn to look up at the oil painting of his own father that loomed over the office. No, it's not always easily done. The phone on the desk suddenly rang. Matthew sighed, thrust the clipboard back into Alex's hands. Well, off you go, Alex, he said. Take Jeremy his horn, but the next time he tries anything, make sure I know about it. Yes, Mr. Price, Alex muttered meekly, grabbing the horn and making a frantic break for the door. Excellent, said Matthew, beaming with triumph and shoving the phone to his ear. Have a good day, Alex. Hello? Is Alex Jennings with you? Came an anxious voice. It was Mrs. Beaumont, the deputy head. Yes, he's just leaving, said Matthew, looking up. Alex was at the office door. Don't let him leave, said Mrs. Beaumont. Matthew started. Pardon? The police are here to see him. The police? His father escaped from hospital, said Mrs. Beaumont. Matthew stopped dead. His father? Yes, his father. Alex J. Jennings, said the voice impatiently. Alex J. Jennings, the explorer. Matthew looked up in horror. Alex was standing at the open doorway, his exit blocked by two great policemen. One had a moustache, the other was totally bald, but they were the exact same height. Their mouths hardened into identical lines. They looked down at the boy in the enormous jumper, his hair as messy and ragged as a tiny dog's. Alex Jennings, said the one with the moustache, we're here to talk about your father. That is the end of chapter 2 of Alex the Dog and the Unopenable Door. Hope you enjoyed listening to it, and hope you are interested in finding out what happens to Alex and the headmaster and what might be at the centre of the Forbidden Land. Thank you very much.